some introductory remarks. She's going to introduce our first panel, Sergeant Dougherty.
Thank you and good morning. I am an Iraq veteran and the Executive Director of Iraq Veterans Against the War, and I would like to thank the Progressive Caucus, especially its co-chair, Congresswoman Woolsey and her staff, and co-chair Congresswoman Lee and Congresswoman Waters for hosting Winter Soldier on the Hill presented by Iraq Veterans Against the War. 2 months ago, over 200 IVAW members gathered in Silver Spring, Maryland to submit, listen to, and offer their eyewitness accounts of the occupations of Iraq and Afghanistan and their firsthand experience in the U.S. military. Winter Soldier, Iraq and Afghanistan represents a tradition of veterans who, as Thomas Paine said, stand up for the heart of their nation during its darkest hours. We continue our duty to our country and our fellow human beings by offering our testimony to Congress today. The stories you are about to hear will not be easy to listen to, but believe me, they are much harder to relive. We have witnessed firsthand the ultimate violence, chaos, fear, and suffering of war and occupation, and are intimately familiar with the indelible mark that it has left on our lives. These 9 Iraq veterans here today are going to relive memories that they would probably rather forget, but they won't, because they know that the people need to hear their stories in order to understand the way that war impacts people, their families, and their communities. These stories are raw, heartbreaking, and disturbing, but most of all, these are the stories of U.S. veterans' real lived experiences while in our military, supposedly serving for the benefit of this nation and our people. Later today, Congress will vote on whether to approve over $160 billion to continue the occupation of Iraq. Every day that the occupation continues, more men, women, and children will be killed, maimed, or forced to flee their country as refugees. More veterans will return home with lifelong scars, emotional and physical, with little support to help them readjust. Many will fall victim to suicide, to depression, poverty. Later today, Congress will be speaking about the cost of the Iraq occupation in terms of dollars and cents. But for us, we're going to show the real human costs of this war and occupation that are hard to measure with dollar signs. Congress continues to look to their fellow politicians, to pundits, to generals, to see what is happening in Iraq. But rarely are the veterans and active duty men and women themselves, many of whom have served repeated tours, been asked for their insight into what is happening. If the Congress's aim is to know the true cost of the war in Iraq, then you must listen to the testimony of the soldiers, the Marines, the service members who've served during this occupation, and the Iraqi people who have survived it. Today is just one step in the process of listening, really listening, to these accounts. Each veteran who will be offering their testimony today has undergone a review process in order to verify and support their experiences. We are prepared today to testify under oath, but cannot because we're not in front of an official committee of the House, but we welcome and look forward to that opportunity. When I was in Iraq, I saw the devastation that our invasion and occupation had met out upon the Iraqi people. I saw and at times participated in the dehumanization and degradation of the Iraqi people. By robbing others of their inherent dignity, by denying them respect, and by treating them as the less than human other, we ultimately robbed ourselves of our own dignity, humanity, and compassion. When I returned home from Iraq, I was angry and disillusioned, and I had a desire to use my experience for something positive, and I was fortunate enough to join with 6 other veterans and form Iraq Veterans Against the War in July of 2004. IVAW is an organization of veterans and active duty military members who have served in the U.S. military since September 11, 2001. We have members across the country and overseas, in Germany, in Iraq, and less than 4 years ago, there were 7 of us, and today there are over 1,200. Our membership has more than doubled in the past year and is continuing to grow. IVAW members stand united around our 3 goals. The first is immediate withdrawal of all occupying forces from Iraq, a goal that Congress can help us to achieve by refusing to authorize the $162 billion supplemental for the war. Our second goal is benefits and care for all returning veterans, which can also be taken steps towards helping with passing the new GI Bill. And the third goal is reparations to the Iraqi people. So far, there have been no meaningful steps taken by the U.S. government to provide adequate compensation and assistance for the catastrophe we've caused to the Iraqi people. And we are asking that that be made a priority. IVAW is organizing the opposition to the Iraq War from within the communities that have been most affected, namely those of the recent veterans and active duty service members. While many of us have taken off our uniforms and put down our rifles, we're still honoring our duty to stand up for what is right, and we won't stop until we can welcome all of our brothers and sisters home. I thank all of you for attending Winter Soldier on the Hill, and I thank each of our testifiers for their bravery and commitment. And now, this will be our first panel of Winter Soldier on the Hill, and all of our panelists will introduce themselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Sergeant Dougherty. I have been prompted to remind everybody that no matter what, we aren't supposed to be clapping in a hearing. So let's keep this as much as we can to the hearing process, which means no outspokenness and no clapping. The outspokenness gets to come from our panelists. Are we starting with Scott or with Christopher? Oh, Jason, I'm sorry. Jason Lemieux.